feel like this is just petty to complain about. However, I'm 3 vodka and lemonades in, so inhibitions be damned. I grew up with a mom who abused me physically, emotionally, and mentally. I don't say this to flaunt my trauma, and I don't say this for pity. This is just some background that would explain some behavior from her. Even as a very young kid, I was never allowed to receive gifts. If I was given a gift in my childhood, whether it be from family or friend, my mom would quickly donate it to Goodwill or any thrift shop, sometimes with the gift still in the box. I had a birthday party once when I turned 7, and my mom put on the invitation to not bring gifts. One of my friend's parents did, and when we got home from the venue, she promptly threw it away. She always told me that she wanted to raise me without a materialism problem. Anything beyond the bare necessities was considered excessive. I grew up with no toys, no games, no fancy or nice clothes. The only thing my mom would buy me for entertainment was books. It's not that we couldn't afford nice things. In fact, my mom and dad frequently bought things for themselves, some of them designer. My sources of entertainment were books and watching my dad play video games. If someone got me gifts, my mom would lecture me over it and make me feel incredibly guilty. She would tell me that I shouldn't accept things from people if I have no way to pay them back. When I got to working age, she forbade me from getting a job, telling me that if I was making money, then I could buy my own place and support myself. The only time she wouldn't make me feel guilty about receiving gifts was Christmas, but my mom had a rule that my family could only buy me books. I got a boyfriend in high school. He wanted to buy me gifts, and I would beg him not to. I told him if he wanted to buy me something, I'd happily accept a trip to a fast food joint. Of course, as I grew older, I realized that my mom was a complete nut job, and that receiving gifts wasn't a moral failure. Like any kid who grew up with helicopter parents, I got good at hiding things. I was also forbidden from getting a driver's license, so I would either rely on my parents for rides, which meant they could keep track of where I was, or I would stay at home. When I was 19, I got my CNA certificate. I begged my mom to let me get a job, and begrudgingly, she agreed. I got a job at a local home care facility. Once I started making my own money, I was actually able to buy things that I wanted. It's not like I went on $100 shopping sprees, but if I saw something I wanted at a mall or at a store, I realized I wouldn't have to beg for it, only to be told no. My mom, of course, was pissed at me, telling me she raised me better than to want pointless things that just take up space. Again, I want to emphasize that when she bought things for herself, she never restricted herself. In fact, some could say she's a bit of a hoarder. But I was 20, so I didn't really care, and would sometimes even buy fairly expensive items, $40 to $50, purely to piss her off. By 16, I knew that my whole life she had abused me, so I mostly stopped caring what she thought of me. I'm in college now, at my grandma's with my parents for winter break. We were going to open presents on Christmas, but because my aunt, uncle, and cousin were coming over on December 30th, we decided we'd wait until NYE. So, today, YE. My mom did not get me a Christmas present, which I was fine with. My grandma got me a book that I had mentioned I really wanted to read. When you grow up doing nothing but reading, you learn to really love it. I also am a huge fan of certain video game franchises, but I rarely, if ever, actually got to play those games myself. It was always me watching my dad. My aunt got me a nice bottle of Sancerre, since I'm of drinking age now, though I was raised in a family that didn't think underage drinking was taboo. So I've pretty much been drinking with family since I was 14. Then, it was time for my cousin to open his presents. My cousin is 16 and lives in a different state, so I really only get to see him, at most twice a year. My mom has always splurged a little on gifts for Christmas for him, but it was never a big-ticket item. I never really cared that he was getting more expensive items than me since I knew we rarely saw him, so it made sense that my mom would want to spoil him a little when we did see him. Also, my aunt is actually a sane human being, so he always had more gifts than I did. I never cared about this either, and was in fact happy for him that he didn't have to grow up living like he was raised under the poverty line. One of his presents, which was from my mom, was a fairly big box. When he opened it, it was a brand new PlayStation 5. I was so happy for him. The look on his face was just pure joy when he pulled back the wrapping paper and realized what it was. I'll never forget the look on his face. But at the same time, I was shocked into silence. I don't know how expensive PlayStation 5s are, but I know they don't come cheap at all, even for used ones. My mom had never once spent that kind of money on me, unless it was for health or school reasons. And honestly, it's not even the price tag that shocked me. It was the fact that it was something that she would definitely consider excessive. I want to clarify that I'm not jealous of my cousin or resent him in any capacity. If I wanted, with the job I have now, I could probably buy myself a PlayStation 5 after a couple of weeks at work. I don't want to say I feel horrified or betrayed, but I definitely feel some form of upset. I don't want to say I grew up deprived of the finer things, and I don't want to sound entitled. But would it really have ended the life of my mom to buy me a toy every once in a while, especially when she was buying herself designer items and Apple products? I'm happy for my cousin. He has a 4.0 GPA, so if anyone deserves a PlayStation 5, it's him. But at the same time, I feel a sinking feeling in my gut that pushes me to tears. I feel upset. In a way, I guess I feel a little betrayed. I also feel like I shouldn't be feeling this. I feel like I'm acting entitled, upset that my cousin got a PlayStation 5 when my mom would rarely spend even $20 on me. I haven't said anything to anyone about this. I didn't make a scene. I didn't want my cousin to feel bad about the gift, which he shouldn't. My sob story is not his problem. Am I the idiot for feeling upset? If you've read this far, I really appreciate it. Thanks for reading through my drunken little pity party. TL. Mom raised me on bare essentials and would forbid me from getting gifts. Gets my cousin a PlayStation 5 as a Christmas gift, and I feel upset about it, but never said anything. Am I the idiot? Edit. I feel that I should mention, I've buried the hatchet with my dad. I realize that he was also very much a victim of my mother's abuse. Did he frick up tremendously during my childhood? Oh, for sure. But I don't hate him. He's sought therapy and done an impressive amount of growth. I'm proud of him. Yes, I deserved better. And there will always be that flicker of rage I feel when I remember everything. But he and I are actually pretty good friends these days, for lack of a better analogy. He's even gone against my mom's wishes and got me into therapy when I was a young teenager. Sure, he's not perfect. He'll still frick up. He still has a lot to unlearn. But that's okay, and I'm happy he's even making an effort to unlearn at all. Even little victories can be huge. He's defended me much more to my mom in recent years, even to the point that he even threatened to divorce her. That never happened, but my mom got the message she couldn't be outright hurtful towards me anymore. These days, it's just passive-aggressive behavior, micromanaging, guilt-tripping, whatever. Still not good by any means, but at least the worst of the abuse is over. Like I said, small victories. Things still aren't all great at home, but me and my dad have a decent, dare I say, good relationship now. Edit 2. A couple of people have asked me why I still talk to my mom, why I put up with her, why I attend family gatherings, etc. I also want to address the point of moving out. I currently live in a college dorm, so in a way, I've already got a foot out the door. I do go home on rare occasions for the weekend, usually because I really miss my dog and my dad. But back to the original point. I only still put up with my mom for the sake of my relationship with my grandparents. My grandparents are completely unaware of any sort of abuse that went on at home. Any bruises I had would be passed off as kids being kids and getting hurt. My grandparents have also always been my biggest supporters and my best friends. They have done more for me than my mom ever has. They practically raised me. If I didn't go to these events, I wouldn't see them. I still put up with my mom because I know at the end of the day, my grandparents love me and will do anything for me. I do plan on coming out about my abuse, but such a task is pretty intimidating. I want to do more self-healing before I say anything. I know for a fact that if my grandparents, or even the rest of my family, knew even half about how my mom treated me, they'd be digging up pieces of my mom across the state. I haven't mentioned the abuse before because my mom is so charismatic and charming to other people that I was convinced that either no one would believe me or that my experiences would be downplayed. I also want to say, I've received a staggering amount of kind messages and support. I truly could not be more grateful. I didn't expect this post to get as much attention as it did. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. Make plans to leave your mom's house as soon as possible and go no contact with both parents. They both abused you and failed you, even if you don't see it that way yet. Then, as soon as you can, get into therapy. Good luck on your recovery journey. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I'm glad you aren't jealous of your cousin or resent him for the gift. That would be unfair to him. But your feelings are valid. It's not about the value of the gift, but the fact that she would never allow you to receive gifts. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a week since the whole PlayStation 5 incident, and let me tell you, things have taken some turns. So after the gift giving, I was feeling pretty low. I tried to keep it together, but my dad noticed. He's been on this path of trying to make amends, and he's been pretty observant of my moods lately. He pulled me aside and asked what was up. I spilled everything, how I felt about the gift, my mom's history of denying me things, and the whole 9 yards. He listened, and for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that looked like genuine regret. He didn't say much, just squeezed my shoulder and told me he was sorry. The next day, my dad did something unexpected. He confronted my mom about the PlayStation and the disparity in how we were treated growing up. I wasn't there for the conversation, but the aftermath was impossible to miss. There was yelling, my mom was crying, and my dad stormed out of the house. I found out later that he had threatened divorce again, and this time, he seemed serious about it. But here's where it gets really crazy. My mom, in a fit of what I can only assume was guilt or panic, tried to make it up to me. She went out and bought me a designer handbag, one of those really expensive ones that she loves. When she gave it to me, I was stunned. It was like she was trying to buy my forgiveness with the same materialism she'd always looked down on. I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to accept it, to finally have something from her that felt like a real gift. But another part of me was just angry. It felt like too little, too late. And it was so out of character for her that it just didn't sit right with me. I ended up telling her I couldn't accept it. She didn't take that well. She accused me of being ungrateful and said I was just like my dad. That's when I lost it. I told her everything I'd been holding back for years, how her treatment had hurt me, how it felt to watch her spoil my cousin while I got nothing, and how her actions had affected my relationship with gifts and material possessions. She didn't have much to say in response, just stood there looking shocked. The fallout from that confrontation was intense. My dad ended up staying at a hotel for a few nights, and I was left alone with my mom. We barely spoke, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I spent most of my time with my grandparents, who could tell something was up but didn't pry. Then, 2 days ago, my dad came back. He and my mom had a long talk, and they've decided to go to couples therapy. I don't know if it'll help, but it's a start. My dad also apologized to me again, this time with more conviction. He said he was going to make sure things were different from now on. As for me, I'm just trying to process everything. I've been talking to my friends about it, and they've been a huge support. I've also been spending a lot of time with my dog, who's always a great comfort. I'm not sure where my relationship with my mom will go from here. It's hard to imagine forgiving her, but I also know that holding on to anger isn't healthy. For now, I'm focusing on myself and my own healing. I'm back at college, and I'm throwing myself into my studies and my work. My husband ejected my toxic aunt from our wedding, ending years of her lies. Our Paris dream paused when a break-in revealed unexpected truths, using a throwaway account because my family knows my main one. Just to start off with, we belong to a South Asian family. My husband, 26-year-old male, and I, 25-year-old female, got married last month. We met in college and hit it off. He is from a well-to-do family, and though our cultures are slightly different, my parents had agreed for our marriage. Not wanting our wedding to be like any other big, fat Indian wedding, where people who don't give two shits about you are also invited, We invited only close family and friends. Now, some of the people we had to invite was out of obligation, including my aunt. She didn't grow up in a financially stable family and married my father's elder brother because she was very pretty, and my uncle was her lottery. She never spoke to him politely and ridiculed him every chance she got. My uncle couldn't even speak up against the domestic abuse he faced from her. She would slap him in public gatherings, and whenever he refused to give her all his money. When I was young, I had a hip deformity that caused me to walk rather weird, and at the time when I was 12, I was dancing on the stage during my cousin's wedding. I was not insecure of my deformity back then. She had made a snide remark on the mic that black devils give birth to children with inherited monstrosity, while pointing at me, and covered it up with a laugh. My mother is on the darker side, and she is highly educated and had a pelvic deformity. Though it had nothing to do with me, my deformity was not genetic. My aunt never liked my mother. I still remember the tears in mother's eyes when I was left behind to walk while my cousins were given the car because my aunt had told me that the groom's family did not want to see me. This had broken my mother's heart. My dad, trying to remain cordial with his brothers, never said anything. This made me extremely insecure of my deformity during my teenage years, and I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. At 17, after some surgeries and procedures, I was completely healthy again, got into one of the best colleges of the country, while my aunt's children failed their high school exams and are still unemployed. My husband and I are now settled in the United States with high-paying jobs. Out of courtesy, we had to invite my aunt too. The problem arose the day before our wedding, when my husband had sat with my side of the family to chat. My aunt had again made a snide remark about how lucky I was and how charitable my husband's heart is to marry a diseased woman. The whole room fell silent. My mother tried to hide her tears, while my husband was deathly calm. He coldly told her to enjoy her stay at the hotel room, and if she dared come out, she would be escorted out by security. My aunt was dumbfounded. He then proceeded to add that it would be a once-in-a-lifetime experience for her broke self anyway. He then left while my aunt and cousins accused me of being arrogant and stuck up. My aunt, uncle, and her children left, while the rest of my uncles and aunts stayed, though with a ton of gossip. My wedding was a bit tense because of this, and I feel like my husband should have let it slide, while my husband disagreed and said he wouldn't have sat and allowed anyone to disrespect me. So, am I being unreasonable? Am I the idiot? Edit. A few points that explain the story better. I did not get mad at my husband. I did not pick up a fight with him. My cousins had posted a story on Instagram about arrogant people forgetting to respect their elders. And at that, I had casually mentioned to my husband that maybe he should have let it slide, and he had said he wouldn't have sat and allowed anyone to disrespect me. I left it at that. We did not fight. My father was my grandfather's favorite son since he actually made something of himself. When my grandfather died suddenly without a will, and my grandmother fell paralyzed, my father's brothers immediately set out to inherit my grandfather's millions without leaving a dime for my father. My aunt took away all my grandmother's jewelries, who was paralyzed on bed. They lived a life of extreme luxury for a few years, buying cars upon cars, Lamborghini, Porsche, Maserati, you name it, island vacations every month, new gadgets, and useless stuff, and so much more until my cousins lost all the money in gambling, and now they are in huge debt, while my father is the one helping them have a roof over their head. It is one of the toxic things about our culture to always respect elders, no matter what. Edit 2. Thank you all. I always knew it was not right for my aunt to treat me that way, but I had felt guilty and like a spoiled child for standing up for myself. For now, I have cut that woman out of my life, especially since I got to know that she backbitched about my husband too. I apologized to my husband and thanked him for standing up for me. He told me it was okay, and that's what he promised me in front of God anyway, and just hugged me. The great news is that we're flying off to Paris this week for our honeymoon. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Yes, you are the jerk. The fact that no one stopped or even challenged her for so many years Allowing such disgusting nastiness to hurt and create long-term mental damage to others is pretty terrible. That your husband chose to finally stand up to it and protect his family, which now includes you, is brilliant. And yet you are upset at him for this? I'm not sure you deserve him in the first place if you can't appreciate what he did for you and your mother here. Comment 2. You are the jerk. As an Indian, I have never been to a wedding without drama. Uncle aunties always find something or the other to complain about. You need to apologize to your husband. He stood up for you. Also, be thankful to him. Your father never stood up for you or your mother. At least your life won't be spent silently sobbing in your room. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the support on my last post. It's been a wild few days, and I've got quite the update for you all. So we flew off to Paris for our honeymoon, and it was supposed to be a fresh start away from all the drama. But, as fate would have it, my phone blew up with messages the moment we landed. My cousin, the one who failed his high school exams, had been caught trying to break into our house back home. Apparently, he was looking for money or anything valuable to sell off. My parents were shocked, and the neighbors had to call the police. It was a mess. Now, let me give you some context about my cousin. He's always been the type to get into trouble. When we were kids, he'd steal candy from the corner store and blame it on other kids. As we grew up, his antics got more serious, but my aunt would always cover for him, saying he was just misunderstood. It's no surprise he ended up like this, but breaking into my house was a new low. Back to the honeymoon, my husband was furious. He wanted to fly back immediately and deal with the situation, but I convinced him to stay. We'd waited so long for this trip, and I didn't want my family's issues to ruin it. So we turned off our phones and tried to enjoy Paris. Meanwhile, back home, my dad had to step in. He's always been the peacemaker in the family, trying to keep things civil even when my uncles and aunt were at their worst. He went to the police station and talked them out of pressing charges against my cousin. Instead, he made a deal with my aunt. He told her that if she agreed to get my cousin into a rehabilitation program and therapy, he'd help them out financially one last time. My dad's always been the responsible one. When my grandfather passed away without a will, my dad was the one who ended up taking care of everyone, even though his brothers had tried to cut him out of any inheritance. He's the kind of man who believes in second chances, and he wanted to give my cousin one. But my dad's condition was that they had to apologize to me and my husband, and they had to mean it. My aunt was resistant at first, but with the threat of her son facing jail time, she agreed. She came over to our house without my cousin, who was still in the rehab facility, and for the first time in my life, I saw her humble. She apologized for everything, from the cruel remarks at the wedding to the break-in. She admitted that she had been wrong about me and my husband, and that she was sorry for all the pain she'd caused. It was a moment I never thought I'd see. My husband, who had been adamant about not letting them off easy, was taken aback by her sincerity. He's always been protective of me, ever since we met in college. He's the kind of guy who stands up for what's right, no matter what. But seeing my aunt like this, he softened. He agreed to the compromise my dad had made, on the condition that they would never cause trouble for us again. The rest of our honeymoon passed in a blur. We tried to put the drama behind us and focus on each other. We visited the Eiffel Tower, strolled along the Seine, and ate way too many croissants. It was a dream come true, despite the rocky start. When we got back, my cousin was out of rehab and actually seemed to be doing better. He got a job at a local store, and for the first time, he was earning his own money. My aunt kept her distance from us, but there was a new sense of peace in the family. As for my husband and me, we're stronger than ever. He's been my rock through all of this, and I've never been more grateful to have him by my side. We're back to our jobs in the United States now, and life is slowly returning to normal. Parents dismiss child's allergy, so hospital trip teaches them a tough lesson. They'll think twice before ignoring warnings again. My wife and I booked a hotel for the first time since infection 19. We asked my parents, who we are close to and only occasionally help babysit, to watch our kids, who are 1 and 3 years old. Both the kids and grandparents were excited, as were we, at the idea of a weekend away and the first break since our kids were born and infection 19 hit. Anyway, our oldest child, 3, is allergic to nuts. It's a serious allergy and was scary when we found out. However, everyone in our family knows, and it's pretty easy to stay away from nuts. So my parents came over early on Friday afternoon, and we all said goodbye in a good mood. Fast forward 24 hours, and my wife and I were 6 hours away and sitting down to dinner when my sister called from the hospital. It was an immediate red flag, and I began to worry. Our oldest had gone into anaphylaxis and was rushed to the ER in an ambulance. My parents were there, and everything seemed okay as our kid was safe and in the hands of the medics. Well, the issue began on Sunday morning when we got home. We rushed home on Saturday evening, and it took us 6 hours to drive back. So we arrived at 4 a.m. on Sunday. My sister was home alone with our kids, and my parents were at their own house. This seemed strange as they were babysitting, but we were just happy that they were okay and we could give them a hug. However, my sister explained that our parents had given the kids peanut butter on toast as a special treat, since a little bit won't hurt. I freaked out and messaged my dad. I won't quote here, but I was rude and cussed out my parents. I was angry and upset that they would give our child something that could potentially unalive them and then abandon them and leave my sister to care for them. My dad's reply was dry, scolded me for not thanking them for babysitting, and said that he didn't see the problem. He also mentioned that he had to give away his ticket to the big game, so he was free to babysit, and I should be grateful for that. I really don't know what to think. On one hand, they're my parents, and I love them. Christmas is next week, and I'd like to visit them. On the other hand, they put my child, their grandchild, at great risk and don't seem to get it. Am I the idiot or overreacting? Update. Wow. I just woke up to this post having blown up. There are too many comments to reply to individually, but I appreciate everyone's input and it's making me see the bigger picture. I honestly think I'm still in shock at the whole situation, and the seriousness of what could have happened hasn't set in yet. I won't be seeing my parents over the Christmas period, and I will be spending it with my sister and my wife's family instead. I've decided to have a serious one-on-one talk with my parents in the new year about our relationship, and I hope they get it and change. If not, then, like many posts said, they almost ended the life of our kid. So, yeah. Thanks for all your kind comments. Update 2.0. I saw a few comments about this and thought I'd explain. My parents had me in their late teens, and we had our first child in our early 20s. So as much as I'd like there to be an underlying cause for their actions, both of my parents are too young to have dementia and are quite healthy for their age. They know we won't be coming for Christmas, and I have planned a visit on the 27th to speak one-on-one with both of them. I will update after the chat. Thanks again for all your kind comments. Now for a few comments before the third update. Comment 1. What is wrong with you? What do you mean you want to visit them because of Christmas? They almost ended the life of your child. You need to go no contact and you need to press charges. That was not an accident. They knew fully well that your child has allergies. This was premeditated. They were trying to prove you wrong and say he doesn't have allergies. They could have ended the life of your child. They're probably the type that thinks allergies are fake or made up. Comment 2. A temporary ban is underreacting. They knowingly gave your toddler something to which he is extremely allergic. And I can't possibly believe that there's no malice in such an action. Did you have peanut butter in your house, or did they bring their own in a premeditated fashion? Your child could have died and it would not have been an accident. Not the idiot, but you should be pressing charges and making that ban permanent. Now, for the update. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm here to fill you in on the joyride of events. After the terrifying incident with my oldest child's allergy, things have been tense, to say the least. When I last updated, I was gearing up for a serious talk with my parents. That talk happened, and it was as intense as I expected. I went over to their place on the 27th, my heart pounding and my mind racing with all the things I wanted to say. I had rehearsed my speech a dozen times, but when I sat down across from them, all my plans flew out the window. I started by reminding them of the gravity of our child's allergy. I could see the realization dawning on their faces as I explained how close we came to losing our little one. My mom's eyes welled up with tears, and my dad, well, he just sat there stone-faced. But when I told them how their actions had broken the trust we had in them, that's when the dam broke. My dad, who had always been the tough, unflappable rock in our family, finally showed a crack in his armor. He admitted that he hadn't understood the severity of the allergy. He thought it was like when I was a kid and would get a rash from certain laundry detergents. He couldn't have been more wrong, and he was sorry. My mom, through her tears, kept saying how foolish they had been to think a little bit won't hurt. But the real shock came when my dad revealed why they had been so cavalier about the allergy. Turns out, my dad had been feeling pushed aside ever since the kids were born. He missed the times when it was just us and he could teach me how to fix a car or throw a ball around. He thought by giving a special treat, he was creating a bond with his grandchild like he had with me. It was a misguided attempt to connect, and it had backfired spectacularly. We spent hours talking, arguing, and yes, even crying. It was a confrontation that had been brewing for years. Ever since I became a parent myself, we dug up old grievances, like how they felt I was too strict with my rules, or how I felt they were too lax and carefree. But amidst all the turmoil, we found a compromise. The compromise was simple yet profound. They would take a first aid course, specifically focusing on allergies, and we would start having regular family dinners again. The dinners would be a chance for us to reconnect as a family, to share stories and experiences, and for my parents to bond with their grandchildren in a safe, controlled environment. Since that day, we've had a few of those dinners, and I can see the change in my parents. They're more attentive, asking questions about the kids' likes and dislikes, and they're careful about what foods are on the table. My dad even made a special shelf in their pantry for allergy-safe snacks, just for our visits. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. There was a moment, a couple of weeks ago, when my mom accidentally brought out a dessert that had traces of nuts in it. The room went silent, and you could cut the tension with a knife. But instead of the explosion I feared, my dad calmly took the dessert away, and my mom apologized profusely. It was a mistake, but their reaction showed me they were taking this seriously. The kids, blissfully unaware of the drama, have started to look forward to these dinners. They love their grandparents, and it's clear the feeling is mutual. My oldest even made a drawing for them, a big heart with all our names in it, which now hangs proudly on their fridge. As for my wife and me, we're cautiously optimistic. We've seen the effort my parents are putting in, and it's brought a sense of peace to our family. We're not ready to leave the kids with them unsupervised just yet, but we're taking it one step at a time. I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd have to lay down the law with my own parents, but here we are. It's been a journey, one that's tested our family bonds in ways I never imagined. But through it all, we've found a way to come together, to understand each other a little better, and to move forward as a family. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.